Radio Voice Italia, Philadelphia.
Class is now in session. Christopher Columbus University is on air from Philadelphia and broadcasting worldwide from within the shadow of Marconi Plaza. Radio Voice Italia is proud to present a recurring segment with civil rights author, professional researcher, and renowned Christopher Columbus expert, Robert Felix Petrone, Esquire.
Buongiorno tutti, and welcome to Radio Voice Italia's Christopher Columbus University, where we teach you the truth about the greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, Christopher Columbus, and update you on the international efforts to preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy. I'm your host, il professore, Robert Petrone. Today on our Christopher Columbus University segment, some news updates. In Hollyweird, California, creator of the Marco Polo television series, John Fusco, has been enlisted by Cavalry Media to write, executive produce, and showrun a television series based on the book by Hans Koenig, Columbus, His Enterprise, which Howard Zinn plagiarized to further perpetuate the slanderous lies about Columbus. Koenig, a friend of Zinn's from his anarcho-communist circles, wrote Columbus, His Enterprise for high school students in the early to mid-1970s. Zinn lifted heavily from Koenig's book, almost verbatim. Koenig's slim polemic cites no sources, falsely called Christopher Columbus, quote, a murderer, and lies about Columbus's character, aptitude, and even his physical appearance. Koenig was not even an historian, much less a Christopher Columbus scholar, but rather a novelist and playwright who traveled to Soviet Russia and communist China in the 1960s. Even The Guardian, a decidedly left-of-center publication, called Koenig's book, quote, highly polemical, and now it's going to be made into a TV series. The Marxist mainstream media will stop at nothing. It will even lie to destroy the legacy of this great Italian explorer. In New Britain, Connecticut, the Italian-American community seeks to celebrate Christopher Columbus Day 2021 by adding an engraving on the base of that city's Columbus statue, honoring its Italian-American military veterans. The local Italian-American Alliance successfully convinced the mayor and city council to reject demands by Marxist radicals to remove the statue based on their false accusations of, quote, genocide by Columbus and other lies. Now the Italian-American community seeks to honor their ancestors, courageous veterans, and fallen war heroes with an inscription serving as, quote, an enduring witness to the courage, dedication, and faith of our New Britain's Italian-American war veterans who, in the spirit of Columbus, ventured into a new world for the glory of God and country, end quote. You can donate to the plaque at a GoFundMe.com website established by the president of New Britain's St. Anne's Festa Italiana, Joe Catanzaro, by going to GoFundMe.com and in the search box in the upper left-hand corner, search for the keywords Joey and cat. That's Joey, Joey, and cat, like the animal, C-A-T. The first hit will show an icon of the Italian and American flags surrounded by laurel wreaths. That's the page you want. Ladies and gentlemen, I am more excited than ever about today's show because today, a dream of mine has come true. We have on today as a guest the premier Christopher Columbus expert in the world, retired Standford University professor of anthropology, Dr. Carol L. Delaney. Dr. Delaney, thank you for coming on Christopher Columbus University. Welcome and good day to you.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh my goodness, not half as delighted as I am, I can't tell you. So Dr. Delaney, I mentioned in the introduction that you were a professor of anthropology at Stanford. Can you please tell us, how did that lead you to be a Christopher Columbus, not just a Christopher Columbus expert, but the Christopher Columbus expert?
Well, I was teaching a class at Stanford in the fall of 1999, and I came across a reference to his millennial beliefs. You know, everybody was very concerned about the turn of the millennium. Even in our country, they thought computers would fail, planes would fall out of the sky, etc. And I came across one little comment about Columbus's millennial beliefs. Well, I'd never heard of them, so I thought this is very interesting. I have to explore. And that was the beginning of my exploration.
That's fascinating. He was interested in the millennium 500 years before it happened. And so then you became a Christopher Columbus expert. How? What research did you do on Columbus?
Oh, I did a lot. I was out at Stanford, but I came to Brown University, where they have a wonderful library, the John Carter Brown Library, about a lot of that kind of material, and that was the beginning of it.
I see. And your research, I understand, took you abroad. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wanted to go see the sites. I went to Genoa, and they have a lot of material there, and obviously a statue. And I went to Spain as well to look up stuff. But when I came back, it was mostly the research, that I could collect.
So you saw the sites that Columbus saw in his lifetime and visited places that he had been, that sort of thing?
Yes.
That's fascinating. And the records you're talking about in Genoa, that would be the city's archives?
Yes. And I think there's I can't remember right now, but I think there's even a little Columbus section or a Columbus library there.
That's fantastic. Now, after you did all of this research, you wrote a book. Can you tell us about the book?
Yeah, I became fascinated with Columbus, and it's called Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, which nobody knows. That he was not just crossing to see if you could cross the ocean. He figured he was going to China. Nobody knew about the American continent in the way. He couldn't go the other way because the Pope had given the other way to the Portuguese. So he had to go west. And he gets to Hispaniola, and I guess he thinks that he's at the periphery of China. Anyway, he sets up a little trading post there, and that continues. But during his time there, he also continued in the Caribbean, hoping he was going to find China.
Yes. Now, what is the title of your book?
Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem.
Okay, and this book what is the specific focus of Christopher Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem?
Well, he was going to China to set up a trading post like Marco Polo had done, and the profits from that were to be used to finance a crusade to take Jerusalem back from the Muslims before the end of the world, which he thought was coming very soon. He'd even figured out how many years were left, and it were not many.
Okay, and that ties in with his millennial beliefs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Crown of Spain, they were very interested in not only reclaiming Europe in the Reconquista, but they also wanted to reclaim Jerusalem. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yes. So they saw Columbus as a vehicle for doing that. Now, your book won an award, did it not?
Yes, I think so, but I can't remember which one.
And so what are the ultimate conclusions you draw in your book about Christopher Columbus?
First of all, I think people do not understand. He was a very good, I liked him. He was a good man, and he was friends with the natives, especially the chief Guacanagari. And one of the son of another chief became his godson when they went back after, the Santa Maria went aground at the first voyage. So he had to go back. He had to leave a bunch of men on the island, and he had to go back and get another ship. He left strict instructions: do not go marauding, do not go raping, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, when he went back to Spain, the godson was, Christianized, and he adopted him as his godson. When he returned back to Hispaniola, all 39 men that he had left were dead on the beach. The men who were with him wanted to go and kill Guacanagari and all his men. And Columbus said, absolutely not, until he found out what had happened. And he believed Guacanagari that they had done all these horrible things. And he remained friends with Guacanagari for the rest of his time when he was there.
Right. So your ultimate conclusion is that Columbus was a good man and not a bad man. So what about all the slander we hear about Columbus as a racist, rapist, maimer, murderer, slave owner, slave trader, grifter, and genocide heir?
I think they know nothing about him. They've probably read nothing by him. I mean, even his journals and his letters show what kind of a person he was. And they should certainly read my book because it is filled with all the research. And, I came across liking him. I would have liked to have met him. He was a good person.
Yeah. So you're saying all of those characteristics that they say about him, they're all false. Is that what you're saying?
They are.
They are. Yeah, I have to agree with Dr. Delaney, not only on that ultimate conclusion, but also on her suggestion that you read her book, Christopher Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, because it is a fantastic book. And you can get it, wherever books are sold. You can get it online, and it's a great read and very in-depth, and definitely demonstrates the extensive research that Dr. Delaney has done about Columbus. So, Dr. Delaney, why do you think this myth about Columbus is being perpetuated?
That's a really good question, and I don't know. I think they assume that he, killed and raped all the indigenous people, which is totally ridiculous and untrue. He was friends with them, as I said, and remained friends. It was the terrible men sent over later by Isabella who went off on these horrible raiding and marauding expeditions. And that's why those people came and killed them.
Right, not Christopher Columbus. And
not Columbus,
so,
no.
In your opinion, it's ignorance, or is it purposeful misinformation? What do you think?
I think it's ignorance. I think people have not been taught the correct information about Columbus. I don't know what they're getting in schools these days, and I probably should go and look. But who knows what they're being taught in school about Columbus right now?
Oh, it's sickening. I know, because
I bet it is.
I have children in all levels of school, and they are being taught that he was a racist, a rapist, a maimer, a murderer, a slave trader, a grifter, and a genocide heir. And and when I confront the teachers about this stuff, they are evasive, and then they'll engage me in dialogue for a brief time, but eventually they'll just say, "Look, I'm finished with this conversation," and that's it. But so what about when we hear actual historians from prestigious universities, such as Harvard, repeating the slander? What do you have to say about that?
I really don't understand it. They probably have not read anything by Columbus, and certainly not his journals and letters and things that other people who knew him wrote about him. He learned the language. He could speak Taino, or however you pronounce that. As I said, the son of one became his godson. Mm-hmm. He was kind to the natives. He did not go marauding and raping, and that's just a lie.
Right.
It was the men with him who did all that horrible stuff.
The men with
against
him.
His explicit orders. I've seen his orders.
Yes.
And they didn't obey, and of course he was not always there. That's
right. So you would agree that just having even a PhD in history does not mean that you have knowledge about Columbus specifically.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yes. So you've mentioned Christopher Columbus's journals, his letters. What other primary sources would you recommend people read? You mentioned people who knew him. What would you recommend people read?
Oh, goodness, that's a hard question. I'd have to look in my bibliography to see. But certainly they should read his journals. That would be the first thing. And I'm trying to think of what else might be useful. Yeah, I really can't off the top of my head.
Yeah,
if they look at my book, they'll find all the information about where to look.
Yes, your bibliography is an extensive one. I have tasked my readers, I've assigned them, if you will, as homework to read History of the Indies, and I think that really is a very honest appraisal of the settlement of the Indies, particularly because Bartolomé de las Casas was protector of the Indians and he was designated by not only the crown but also by the church as protector of the Indians, and was their mouthpiece and was a vociferous mouthpiece for them. And I thought that the very beginning of History of the Indies was effusive praise for Columbus, and all throughout History of the Indies it seems that he is demonstrating that Columbus really was fighting against the Hidalgos and really was fighting for the Taínos. So I would recommend History of the Indies. And of course, there's Peter Martyr and the various other primary historical sources. But I'm glad to hear you say that just because someone has a history PhD, even from prestigious universities like Harvard or Yale or Columbia, doesn't mean that they've read these primary historical sources, and therefore doesn't mean that they have any real knowledge about Columbus. I think that most of these scholars who slander Columbus are relying on Howard Zinn's work, which itself is a plagiarization of Koenig, Hans Koenig's work, which of course cites zero sources, much less any primary sources. On the contrary, Dr. Delaney's book, Christopher Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem, is based on the primary historical sources, and you will find many of them in her bibliography. So, Dr. Delaney, have people around the country been contacting you much lately in their respective fights to protect the holidays and statues and monuments to Christopher Columbus, to help inform mayors and city councils and school boards about the truth regarding Columbus?
Very few, very few. I wish they would. I think they just either don't know about my book, or they obviously don't know much about Columbus. I wish they would contact me. And if ever I see anything, I contact them.
Oh, wonderful. Well, yeah. So if you're willing to be a resource to people trying to inform these political and educational bodies, how can people reach you? Is there an email address they can contact you at?
Yes, C. Delaney at Standford.edu.
Okay, C. Delaney, and Delaney, so that's the letter C, and then your last name, D-E-L-A-N, as in Nancy, E-Y, at Stanford, STANFORD.edu. C. Delaney at Stanford.edu. Now, aside from Christopher Columbus and the quest for Jerusalem, do you plan to write any more on the Columbus issue?
I haven't really thought about it. When appropriate, I will write letters to the newspapers and, try and change their views or present my view and the correct view about him. But so far I have not been contacted by, I've given some talks.
Yes.
And maybe as it gets closer to Columbus Day, I will be asked again.
Well, I hope so, because I think that the world needs you now more than ever to help preserve Christopher Columbus's legacy. And I hope that interested listeners out there who are trying to get the truth out there to these bodies will contact you at cdelaney@stanford.edu, because Dr. Delaney is a wealth of information. I learned much, and I had read the primary historical sources, not only in English, but in Spanish. And I learned a great deal from reading Dr. Delaney's book. So if there is one thing that you would like people to take away based on your extensive knowledge of and research on Christopher Columbus, what would that one big takeaway be?
That he was a good man.
Thank you.
He learned the language. He was friends with them. One became his adopted son. I liked him. As I read more of the stuff, I came to like him very much.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I did not know hardly anything about Christopher Columbus, except that in 1492 he sailed the ocean blue.
Right.
Until I read History of the Indies, and that blew my mind. I thought to myself, why isn't all of this in the history books? It seemed to me he was the first civil rights activist of the Americas, fighting for the Tainos and preventing the Hidalgos from harming them, and conducting those underground railroads on his ship, where he picked up Taino slaves from the Caribs and ferried enslaved Tainos back to Spain to be baptized and therefore liberated. Because as I've repeated your phraseology on that matter, baptized people could not be enslaved in Christendom. And that was the first time I had ever heard it put that way. And that was from hearing your interviews. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly right. That's a very good way of putting it. So
he
also
wanted them all to go to heaven. That's why they had to be baptized. That was the other reason. He wanted them to be saved.
Right. He wanted nothing more than the salvation of the Taino people, both earthly salvation and spiritual salvation. Yes. And God bless him. God bless him for that. And I think that is one of the big reasons why he is so vilified today. I think that in this increasingly not only secular world, but anti-Christian world, I think that Christopher Columbus is hated. He was a capitalist in the time of empires, and this is a big time to be slandering capitalism. He was religious, and this is a big time to be slandering the religious. And so that's why that may be the one small area where you and I disagree. You say that it's probably ignorance that causes the myth about Columbus to be perpetuated. And I think that's true. I wouldn't say I disagree with you. I think that's true to a certain extent. But I think that there are some prime movers in this propaganda movement that actually are purposefully pushing misinformation. I agree with you. They probably have not read the primary historical sources, nor do they want to, because that would create cognitive dissonance with what they've read with Howard Zinn, who plagiarized Hans Koenig, who cited no sources in his polemic against Columbus. But that's just my opinion. So, Dr. Delaney, thank you so much. I am so happy that you are a willing resource for people. And I strongly urge people to, number one, buy your book, Christopher Columbus and the Quest for Jerusalem. I strongly urge people, number two, who are interested in getting the truth out to quote unquote educators and quote unquote politicians, to contact you at cdelaney@stanford.edu so that you could be a resource in that fight. And I certainly hope that you will be willing to come back on the show again sometime in the future, and maybe we could talk about specific things going on and get your take on them. So it has been not only a pleasure, it has been an honor to have you on, Dr. Delaney, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for me to be on.
Oh, thank you. And that's today's class. For more news, articles, and resources about Christopher Columbus as the first civil rights activist of the Americas, icon of Western culture, paragon of Catholic virtue, and greatest hero of the 15th and 16th centuries, visit preservecolumbus.us. That's Preserve Columbus, rendered as one word, .us. And post a little note of appreciation for our webmaster, Tom LaCosta. I'm il professore Robert Petrone. A presto!
The Jersey Shore has fun and sun, sand and sea, and Radio Voice Italian.
This is Radio Voice Italia, USA.